Opposition MPs are calling for a parliamentary inquiry into a decision by the Housing and Communities Secretary Robert Jenrick to approve the West Ferry Printworks, a £1 billion development project in the London borough of Tower Hamlets. Approval was granted to the developer Richard Desmond in January, a day before the introduction of a new community infrastructure levy, potentially saving Mr Desmond an estimated £40 million. 2 weeks later, Mr Desmond donated £12,000 to the Conservative Party. After Tower Hamlets Council took legal action against Mr Jenrick, the Housing Secretary accepted that the planning application had been unlawful by reason of apparent bias and recused himself from any further involvement. He also took no part in today's proceedings in Parliament, delegating to the Junior Housing Minister, Chris Pincher, the task of answering an urgent question on the matter from the Labour MP, Rachel Hopkins.
Can I ask the Minister, is it a coincidence that Mr Desmond made a substantial donation to the Conservative Party just days after the Secretary of State rushed through permission for the West Ferry development against the advice of his own planning inspector, and one day before Mr Desmond would have become liable for a £50 million tax bill?
Mr Speaker, I don't know when Mr Desmond made donations, or in this case, payments for tickets to a Conservative Party event, as I believe he has donated to other political parties, including the Labour Party. He's clearly a very generous man. And I don't know that, nor does my right honourable friend, because we have no knowledge of those political donations when we are making planning decisions. My right honourable friend has laid out his reasons for his decision very clearly. He has made them honestly and fairly. He, like me, is mindful of his responsibilities according to the Ministerial Code and MHCLG proprietary codes. We will always take decisions fairly, based on their merits, and always in the interest of the people.
Well, Andrew Wood sits with the Conservative group on the Labour-controlled Tower Hamlets Council, but he left the Conservative Party in February over Mr Jenrick's handling of the project. I asked him what he made of the government's explanation.
What we do know, and it's been admitted, is in late November there was a fundraising dinner at which Richard Desmond, who owns the development, his commercial director, and two senior figures from the development company Mace were present at a fundraising dinner. They sat at the same table as the minister. You know, these are not big tables. The dinner would have lasted for several hours. What did they talk about? The minister sort of says that they, as soon as Richard Desmond mentioned the print works, that he stopped the conversation. But what else did they talk about? And then within 4 or 5 weeks of that dinner and meeting the developer, the minister is basically overturning his own inspector's recommendations to approve the scheme. It just looks really odd.
What about the donation to the Conservative Party by Richard Desmond?
It's troubling, but it was only £12,000 this year and I think £10,000 previously. It's not a lot of money. I'm not sure it really explains why it happened. So, this whole episode has just raised, for me, more and more questions that still don't really answer the core problem, which is why did he make the decision and why did he deliberately do it on the 14th of January?
Was an explanation given to you?
No. So, this is why I'm doing lots of work and sort of trying to get a full understanding of exactly why the minister made the decision, because what has been put into the public domain, whether it is the fundraising dinner or the donations or the judicial review documents themselves, they just raise more questions because there are disconnects between what's in the public domain that we know about the site and what the viability was and what the ministry seem to be saying. And there is a hole in this story that I don't fully understand, which may explain why they made that decision.
Do you think there might have been corruption involved?
The problem we have in Tower Hamlets is we have endemic corruption and we've had it for years. So when I look at a problem, in Tower Hamlets, traditionally we think corruption may be part of the explanation. I don't know that's the case here. All I know that I have a decision that I don't understand.
You're saying it looks bad, basically?
Yes.
What about the decision that was then taken when the court case came about for the minister to recuse himself from any future decision, admitting that this had been unlawful?
Yes, well, he admitted it was unlawful on the grounds of apparent bias. And I know a number of legal, I'm not a legal expert, but a number of planning experts have said how unusual it is for a minister to admit that. It's extremely rare. So I know in sort of the legal world, this has also raised lots of issues and questions as well.
But he has taken himself out of the picture for the future. Do you welcome that?
Yes, but the very interesting thing is the request from Tower Hamlets Council to the court was for full disclosure of all documents. And because they agreed to quash the judicial review, because he accepted it was unlawful, those documents have not entered the public domain yet.
What should happen to Robert Jenrick now?
I think there needs to be a full investigation, which I've asked the Cabinet Office to do, as well as the House of Commons Select Committee. The Minister needs to release all of these documents so we can understand what is happening. But I have to admit, I haven't been impressed by his decision or what's happened in the last couple of weeks.
Can he stay as housing minister in those circumstances?
I don't think he should. He's going to be making some really important planning decisions if all of the newspaper reports have been believed about changing the planning system. And if he can't handle this case and deal with it properly, I don't see how we can trust him to handle fundamental changes to the planning system in the United Kingdom.
Tower Hamlets councillor Andrew Wood, who left the Conservative Party in February.